Welcome to the G-Spot.
Five, four, three, two, one.
Hello everybody and welcome to Dynamic GT League's G-Spot. Yeah, I need a breath. Okay, episode number 39. Now, for anyone that doesn't know what the G-Spot is for Dynamic GT League, well, I'll give you a little origin story. Gary got so many penalties in a race, we had to show what he got them for. So we did a little video and it ended up being called the G-Spot, with the G being for Gary. Also a little play on words with the G-Spot. So yeah, now on the G-Spot we get to talk about and look at some of the weird and wonderful things that happen in the Dynamic GT League. Also, it gives us a platform to be able to show the footage if a report has been placed. So if a driver's not happy with something that's happened on the track, they can place a report, and we do a bit of stewarding on it and we make a decision, and all of that is done. And then once that's done, it gives us the opportunity to then for me to record the footage of it, show the clips of it. So I don't necessarily go into all the footage and detail that we do as stewards, but I try and show more than enough anyway, and do a few different camera angles and different things like that. But do try and show the key aspects of why decisions may or may not have been made. And having the G-Spot allows us to, like I say, to show why decisions have been made. And personally, I think it's a great tool for people to be able to look and see what it is that we're looking at, and things like that, and perhaps see where they may have gone wrong, or other people have gone wrong, or why people have put reports in. But basically, it's all to help in the learning and the benefit of all going forwards. So yeah, we get to look at some of the reported stuff, and then we get to look at some weird stuff that may happen on occasion, or funny stuff, or as in this occasion, as I've just seen, I need to edit the picture on the screen. You won't know this, but I'll change it now. So nothing to see here other than, yeah, gee whiz is now what a move of the decade. So something for us to have a look at there. Okay, so from the latest DGT race, round 3, from Circuit de la Sarthe Le Mans, there's been, I think there's 5 things reported. One of them, though, has been put forward for us to actually look at on the G-Spots. That's another thing I suppose we do as well, isn't it? If people want clarification on things, a clarification of a rule or a situation or a decision, all different things. Also, we might do some admin's announcements now and again. Like, for example, not that we need to do it now, but the boost level is the boost type is being changed for the rest of the season. That may be something we'll talk more about on the next commentary video rather than a G-Spot. But anyway, regarding this one, this G, normally SRI Ray would join us for the G-Spots if we could get the time in for it. However, with it being SRI that's involved in some of these incident reports, he has said himself that he doesn't think it would be fair if he was involved in this G-Spot. And for anyone that doesn't know, if any of the people that are involved in doing the stewarding are actually reported, they are not allowed to have any input in the stewarding decisions or anything like that. They're not part of it. So it's not like if someone reported me for something, I would sit there going, yeah, well, I did this or I did that. There's none of that. We don't allow it. So the person is removed. So Ray didn't have any input in any of the decisions made involving himself. Same with Steve F1, with the ones involving him. Okay, so yeah, with Ray not joining us, if I had more time, I'd perhaps try and edit something funny in here. But number one, I'm not funny, and number two, I haven't got the time. So instead, what we'll do is we'll crack on with the G's. G1, race 3, SRI's report, me ball bag, your ball bag, we ball bags. Okay, so lap 1, turn 1 to 2, I go deep but stay on track. Mr. Harp goes for the apex while I'm still there and bounces his car off on the exit. I feel I shouldn't have to wait as he turned into the apex while another car was there. The stewards looked at this and the view was Ray moved up the inside of Dave fairly before running wide on the exit of turn 1 but stayed on the track. Dave then went for the apex at turn 2 even though Ray was still alongside, causing minor contact. The steward's verdict is that there'd be no penalty here, but Ray should really have been given a little bit more space by Dave at turn 2. And we'll go on to have a look at that right now. So this was at the start of the race, Le Mans heading up to the first chicane. So we've got SRI and Dave the up side by side. SRI goes through, stays on the road, and then there's a bit of contact at the second part of the chicane. And there's Dave rejoining. So if we look from SRI's view, he's fairly up alongside, there's absolutely nothing wrong there. He is a little late on the brakes, but he does stay on the road. And then there's that little bit of contact. Now, different views may look like different situations. So looking at it from Dave's view, you see Ray going in a little hot, and then Dave heading into the corner. We didn't see the contact there, but we could see when it happened. But we'll have a look from another view, from off board anyway. So this is all fine at the moment. Ray going late on the brakes. Now, if Dave was still side by side there, Ray wouldn't be able to go that wide. Now, there was a point where SRI's car was still turning left a little bit, but we'll see stuff in slow motion in a moment. So we'll see Ray's car still turning left a little bit, but the key point here is Ray would need to have space at the apex of the second part of the corner. So as Ray's coming in to the braking point here, yes, he's a little late on the brakes, yes, he's gone a little bit hot, but he does manage to avoid everybody and stay on the track, which is the right thing to do. Once he's stayed on the track, he is entitled to space around the corner. Around turn 2. So from a steward's perspective, from this point on, yes, SRI's gone a little bit deep into this corner, but from this point SRI is going to need to give Dave space at the next corner. Now we'll see that SRI is going to have a little bit of steering still to the left here just before he's going to turn in right, which is happening now. Then there's the bit of contact. SRI's car ends up on the curb in about where his car would be expecting to be anyway, so whether that was fully because of the contact or not, hard to say. But as we have another look from SRI on the bonnet cam, so you'll see that his car does end up where it needs to be, all over the apex. Now, the key part for the stewards is with Dave the Harp's car is at this point what happens just before the contact. Now, with SRI having gone a little bit deep, Dave can see that SRI is there. So Dave's given him plenty of space here, but what Dave will need to do at the second part of this corner is give space to SRI. He needs to give him that car's width at the second part of the corner. And unfortunately for Dave, he actually turns in and goes for the apex off the corner. Now, what that ends up doing is it results in the contact. So SRI, yes, is steering a little bit left at the moment, but he's going to start steering right. But Dave is already steering right, and now he's going in towards the apex of the corner. He's on a trajectory that is not going to leave SRI any space at the corner, and that's where the contact has come from. So although some may say, well, SRI had his steering left, there was a little bit of steering left, and he's just in the transaction of steering right. However, Dave the Harp's car needs to give SRI's car space at the corner, and Dave's car turns in and goes for the apex of the corner. You can't do that when there's a car there. Now, some may say, well, SRI shouldn't have been there. Well, he was there. He's gone for an overtake and he's gone a little bit deep, but he stayed on the track and he's made contact with nobody. There's nothing wrong with that. The fact that he stayed on the track is actually testament. It'd been easy to go straight through the corner. And cars can't just disappear Now, as I was trying to sort of mention through that, had they gone through the left-hander side by side with Dave on the right-hand side of SRI, and SRI had taken that line that he did, then any contact or any forcing of Dave off the track would be SRI's fault, no doubt about it. But that's not what's happened here. Ray's gone a little later on the brakes, Dave's gone for the switchback, but unfortunately, the second part of the corner, Ray's still got his car on the tarmac and is entitled to space at the second corner, and Dave's gone for the apex. And as we said, you can't go for the apex when there's a car there, and that is why the stewards came to the decision that they did. Okay, on to the next one. To race 3 SRI report, the fastest way between 2 points is a straight line. Obviously the titles for these, I've made them up by the way, just for a bit of a laugh. Okay, lap 5, on the first straight I get a run on Demon R and Dave the Harp. Then as I get alongside Mr. Harp, I feel he tries to close the door too late and call me out for turning in on him. Now obviously I haven't got any footage of it, but at this point Dave did call out SRI for turning in on him. So SRI has put this in as a report, which means it gets looked at and everyone can see what happened here. So the steward's view is Ray moved alongside Dave on the Mulsanne straight before the pair were involved in some minor door banging. Steward's verdict, neither driver was to blame. Ray moved alongside Dave fairly, neither driver steered towards the other, and it was the slightly different trajectories of the two cars while both going straight that caused the initial contact. This and the subsequent contact was deemed to be insignificant. Now what I will add is, in any situation for any of the drivers, if you find yourself bumping doors with someone, once you've realised that first bit of contact, the thing to do then is move away from each other. It's the best thing you can do. It solves any issues, and if you're going to call someone out, you can say, I'm there mate, or something along those lines. Okay, so let's have a look then at the footage of what happened here. Dave did mention to Ray at the time, he said he wasn't happy with him turning in on him, so we'll have a look at the footage from here, from the off-board view. We don't really see a lot. SRI's got a great slipstream on me, and I thought he'd bump draft me, and this is the point where I actually said I thought you was my mate, and he just overtook me. And again, from these camera angles you don't really see too much, but you'll see SRI pop out and pop out again, and then there's a little bit of contact, and then a little bit more contact, and then a bit more contact, and a bit more contact, and that's those points where I was on about. After the first bit of contact, drivers should be moving away from each other. Okay, so let's have a look then on board SRI. Now, I'm using the bonnet view a bit more this evening because I think it shows a nice where the car is at the front. So he's got the slipstream with Dave, and I will say the right hand side, the lane, this can be used, so SRI pulls out, and then there's a little bit of contact, and there's a little bit more contact. And obviously one of the things that we do as stewards is we do look at whether the drivers are like turning left into each other, right into each other, and so on. So same camera angle on board with Dave, and we're driving along, and then we're going to see Ray appear. Now some people may have spotted a couple of things already as Dave's car's wobbling here, but I am going to highlight it in a moment as we will look at some stuff in slow motion. The trajectories that the stewards were on about is if we look at Dave's car and Ray's car and the white line on the track. So SRI pulls out, Dave's car is wandering more right, and SRI's car, you can't see it on this view, but SRI's car was wandering a little left. Right, so they're going in straight lines, but they're not going straight, they're going on a slight angle. So we're on board with Dave the Harp, so his car sort of drifted over to the left a bit, now it's drifted over to the right a bit, and this is where the first point of contact happens. And then there's a bit more contact and a bit more contact. So we'll have a look at this off board in slow motion, and this will show it a lot better. So off board from SRI, so as he starts pulling across, as I mentioned, this right hand lane beyond the white line, you can use that, no problem. So if we look at the white lines and the positions of the cars, Dave's car is starting to wander towards the white line a bit more. SRI moves to the right a bit more. So SRI is actively trying to stay away from Dave the Harp. But now his car's straightened up a bit, now SRI SRI's car is slightly drifting left while Dave's car is still slightly drifting right, and it's getting closer and closer to that white line. And this is where both cars have now come together. Neither's turned into each other, they're both going in straight lines on a trajectory where they come together. Is either one of them at fault? No, not really, but as you'll see from this view again, Dave's car's drifting from that white line in the middle over to the right. SRI is moving over to the right, moving away from Dave, and he's going to straighten himself up, and he's on the white line, and then the two cars are now, they're just on a trajectory that's coming together. And there's no reason why SRI can't put his car in that position. He can do fairly, but I know for myself, part of the concern here was that Dave was shouting or saying to Ray, stop turning in on me. I'm there, but SRI hasn't turned in on him. Both of the cars are on a trajectory, they're both going straight, and there's a slight contact, and that's where, as I mentioned, that first slight contact, the next port of call for both drivers should be to move away from each other. So yeah, it's one of those where I think if you're in either seat, you may see it different ways. But when you actually look at the footage, like the stewards do, and as I said, I'm not even showing every bit of footage that the stewards look at here. I'm showing just some short clips that show exactly what we're on about. That it does show that you've got one car moving from left to right without really any steering input, it's just the trajectory they're on, and another car actively trying to avoid and move away from that car and eventually straightening up, and they're both on a trajectory that comes together. Is either one of them in a position to be called out for doing that? Not really, no. There's not a lot in that at all. That's just my personal opinion. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. D3 race 3 SRI report, a touch too far. Okay, so lap 6, the main straight. I get a run on Mr. Harp and I feel he turns in on me. But the steward's view on this one is that Ray moved alongside Dave through the right kink onto the Mulsanne straight with minor contact between the pair. Dave then retired from the race. The steward's verdict: Ray was not at all to blame for the contact. He moved alongside Dave fairly, and although he did appear to initially drift slightly across, he was already steering away from Dave before the contact happened. Now, I am aware that up to this point in the race there were a few incidents that happened that weren't reported involving Dave that would easily have frustrated any driver regarding driving standards. This is where drivers need to be reporting things to help improve driving standards, and also the stewards have looked at these because they have been reported. Okay, let's take a look. So looking at spectate view, we've got SRI, Dave Harp's behind Jason, and Dave unfortunately has to back up a little bit here because Jason was a little cautious through the corner. That gives SRI the run up the inside, and a little bit of contact, and that is what happened there. It was at that point that Dave had a word with Ray, and I had a word with Dave. So from SRI's view, he's got a great run on Dave here, moves to the inside, but look at his steering angle, he's turning right, straightens up a little bit, and there's still a little bit of steering angle on. So SRI's car does drift a little left at one point when he straightens up, but he's always still trying to turn right, so he's actively not trying to go near Dave. So we look at Dave here, he's up behind Jason, he was slowed down a little bit on the way into the corner. SRI's now up alongside, and then there's a bit of steering to the right, and then there's a bit of contact. So that's the bit of contact that SRI has mentioned. Now Steve F1 was following, you can watch this from on this view, and we'll see SRI, there's that little move to the centre, but he's then steering right, and then the two cars come together. And we are going to have a look at this in a few more camera views. So there's the little bit of contact, and obviously there's a bit of, I mean, when the cars wobble, it almost makes it look like there's left turning. But what I want to show here is, the steering angles are important, but the contact there is one of those contacts where there's not a lot in it, and once there's the contact, drivers should be moving away from each other. But the steering angle is what I know I'm interested in. Is SRI is always trying to steer to the right, apart from that moment of straightening up but then steering to the right. But if we look at Dave's steering, and this is why one of the reasons why the stewards have said what they did, is Dave's steering is to the right a bit, 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 and then to the right a bit more. So Dave is also turning right. However, when it comes to just before the point of contact, Dave's car is steering right into SRI's car. So we'll play this on in slow motion at the moment. So we can see at this moment in time, both cars giving each other more than enough room. Absolutely no problem with this. So as we get closer to this little kink, we'll notice that SRI moves over to the right and actually goes over the white line. So he's giving Dave plenty of space. Dave's giving SRI plenty of space. Dave is still coming over. SRI straightens up at this little moment, but then continues to steer right. So SRI is doing what we'd expect him to do to leave that space. Now, yes, his car has drifted slightly left, but with his right steering on, now it starts moving back to the right as the cars come together. So SRI is actively trying to stay right, move right, and stay right. At no point does he steer left or turn into or intentionally make contact with another car. So we'll watch the footage again in slow motion here, and on Dave's view we'll do the same thing. We'll see SRI's car moving about. We'll also see Dave's car is going to start turning right a little bit and moving over towards the right. Now this is where SRI's car straightens up a little bit, but then he turns right, but also Dave is still turning right. SRI's car's steering is going to kick in now and it's going to start turning right, but Dave is now turning right as well. So at the point of contact, Dave the Harp is also turning right. So we'll get to see that in a moment on the steering angles. And I'm not doing this to pick on anyone, I'm doing it to show what it is that we look at. It's the steering angle just before the contact of the cars. SRI's is turning right to move away from Dave, but Dave's was turning right, moving into SRI. So we'll see SRI's turning right, he straightens up, turns right, and that's now is where the contact's going to come. That's where the steering goes left a little bit. So the steering going left isn't SRI turning left, that's once the contact has already happened. And obviously the steward's view is the steward's view. How I word it, I may not always word it perfectly, I may get some words wrong, which is why if anybody has any questions, feel free to send it to the page. But having shown the footage and the stewards looking at that footage, that is why the decision was made that Ray was not at all to blame for the contact there. So yeah, right, okay, let's move on to the next one. E4 Race 3 Steve F1 report. Just call me Moses. Okay, so Steve F1 says 15:05 and reporting myself. Not my best piece of driving. Was driving frustrated and outbraked myself and hit several cars. Waited on the exit for the drivers. I thought I had wiped out. Looking back afterwards, I didn't let Demon R and Jimmy through. So in hindsight, I should have dropped to the back of the field. Okay, so the steward's view. Steve F1 missed his braking point and tried to take evasive of the cars in front of him, missing everyone except Demon R, who was pushed off the circuit and dropped from second to last place. Steve slowed and let several cars back through on the exit, but was then bump drafted by Jimmy and two other drivers. The steward's verdict is a stage 1 penalty to Steve F1 for an unfair overtake on Demon R, -2 points. The stewards were initially torn on whether to award a penalty, as this incident was only reported by Steve himself. The fact he did the right thing by waiting on the exit, albeit not for Demon R, and also because he later retired from the race to avoid causing any further incidents. Demon R was deemed to be the only real victim in this incident. Jimmy wasn't actually hit by Steve and ended up bump drafting him after the corner anyway. And because of how much his race was impacted, it was decided... and because of how much Demon R's race was impacted, it was decided a penalty should be applied to Steve F1. So a few different things to mention there, but we'll take a look at this one, shall we? I mean, okay, it's on me, but even I find this funny. I laughed at this, maybe not at the time, but seeing it afterwards, I did. Okay, so Steve F1's in 7th place here. We've got Jason, Demon R, Dave the Arp, Connor, Jimmy, SGP, and here comes Steve F1, straight through, bosh, bish, bash, bosh. Definitely a mistake that Steve F1 does not normally make. That's for certain. So we're looking here now. How he got through that gap and this gap to hit me, I don't know. But cheers, guys. Someone could have blocked him. Now Steve F1 does pull over. He waits. Now, as we know, because it's been mentioned, he doesn't wait for Demon R. And there are a couple of factors for that. One, Steve may, even though it's obvious here who he's hit and who he's taken out, he may not know exactly who he's made contact with. He may have known he was in 7th going into the corner. He's let a few cars back through, but we haven't got to the other key point. So we're on Demon R, happily going for the lead, and not anymore. And Dave gets in there as well, and there's Jimmy. So we're going to see ahead of us the other factor for Steve F1. He now has 4 car wide behind him. He can do no waiting. So even if he wanted to wait for Jimmy or Demon, there's no safe way of doing it. Now we'll go on board with Jimmy here, and we'll see that Jimmy actually takes evasive from Dave. So Steve F1 technically doesn't have to wait for Jimmy. But what Jimmy does is something that is a signal to me if I was in Steve F1's position. Jimmy does bump draft Steve F1. Now, me personally, if I have had a little bit of a bump with someone and I'm waiting for them, but they choose to bump draft me, they choose to hit me and speed me up, that to me is a signal of, it's okay, mate, carry on. And I would carry on. So in that situation, yeah, I mean, Steve doesn't need to wait for Jimmy anyway. But if he felt that perhaps he had to, the fact that Jimmy gave him a nudge up would be, to me, a signal saying it's okay, mate. Now, obviously, Steve F1 has received a penalty for not waiting for Demon R, because Demon R was in 2nd place. With the contact, it's dropped him all the way to the back of the field. So Steve F1, it's a situation where he has attempted to do the right thing by waiting. Unfortunately, it's just got it slightly wrong. And when there's a situation like that, when you overtake 6 cars in one go, yeah, you might not wait for the correct car. Just ask SRI. Steve F1, you're not as good as SRI in that respect. You've got another 7 cars to try and overtake at the same time to beat the record. As the stewards mentioned as well, there was conversation about should it be taken into consideration Steve F1 taking himself out of the race, and it's an interesting topic of discussion, but ultimately I think the simplest way to look at that is no. Retiring from a race would not void you from any wrongdoing you've done in that race. It's just the way it would probably have to be. But you never know, circumstances may affect a steward's decision regarding that in the future. I mean, it's one that could be a topic for discussion. I mean, Steve F1 in this situation has realised he is having a race where he is not driving to his usual standard, and he has removed himself to not cause any further incidents, which I've got to say, respect to him. Right, okay, so let's then move on to the next one, which was kind of reported, but not. But it was. But it wasn't. What it was, but it was sent to the G-Spot. So let's have a look. G5, race 3, that's alright. I tried my laggest. Lap 4, second last chicane. I missed my braking point due to being distracted by Gary's lag and tried to take evasive but make contact with Mr. Harp. I don't overtake him, but he sounded really frustrated even though it was accidental. Yeah, so it was lap 4, so there was a bit of contact a little later on. I think it was lap 5 and 6. between the two as well. Okay, so let's have a look at what the stewards have said about this one then. So the stewards' view, this was not looked at by the stewards as it was felt more appropriate for it to be discussed on the next G-Spot. I'm actually going to go into why right now. Okay, so a G-Spot ago, well, a couple of G-Spots ago, I think it was the last one, there was a report from Art Pal where I think he reported himself for making contact with Conrad, which he didn't know about until after the race. And the stewards noted on that one that in that situation, Art Pal, maybe the better thing to do would have been to message Conrad himself and say, look, I've just seen I hit you. I didn't mean to, mate. If you want to report it, that's up to you. So basically just send a friendly message saying, sorry mate, didn't mean, just seen I'd done this, didn't know I'd done it, my bad. This pretty much kind of comes under the same scenario. So as SRI mentioned, so he tried to take evasive, but made contact with Mr. Harp. He doesn't overtake him, but Dave sounded really frustrated, even though it was accidental. So the stewards felt that this one was more SRI sort of putting it forward so that Dave the Harp could see what had happened, so he knew why SRI was where he was. And now we can have a look. So let's have a look. So as we're coming into the last few chicanes, the key factor here we'll see is Gary's lag. His car is moving around quite a lot. And SRI goes up the inside, brakes a bit late, and then we see that he's all over the curb. And we'll get a better angle of it in a moment. Now, unfortunately, Gary's lag was really bad in this race, so it was very difficult to know exactly where he was, because like with this, we don't know if his car is actually where it was. So SRI's gone up the inside, braked late, realised it, took evasive, made a little bit of contact, and that's where that's come about. Now some people may say, well, he's just missed his braking point. When you've got a car lagging around you like that in front of you, your focus ends up being on that car, and it is very easy to make mistakes like SRI has made here. But again, I say he wanted this to be shown so that Dave could see exactly what had happened, but also to sort of put his hands up to say, yeah, I did make a mistake, I was put off, and I took evasive, I did what I could. And that's one of those situations where, blame Gary, that's why it's called the G-Spot. Can fully understand though why, I mean, if you're in Dave's position there, you would be thinking, what the hell has just happened there? Because you'd be looking in your mirrors and you'd be, okay, I'm safe to turn in, and then when you've turned in, there's a car off the track on the inside, and you would be wondering what the bloody hell, where the hell have you come from? But yeah, I mean, I fully understand people getting frustrated. It's just how they conduct themselves when they are frustrated that I think really can make a difference. Okay, that was, I tried my best to avoid the lag, so let's move on to the next one, shall we? G6, mind the gap. Okay, so let's take a look. Stewart's view. The admins received feedback from a driver about an incident in the race where they were spun around by another driver who didn't wait. While we would prefer these types of incidents to be put in as a report or for the victim to message you, the driver, directly, we would remind all drivers to wait at the first safe opportunity if you are aware you have caused an incident with another driver. So it sounds like there may have been an incident somewhere in the race, and so one of the drivers is just want to put out a friendly reminder that if you do happen to knock someone off, make sure you wait for them. Okay, only one more G to go, and it's a special. I don't know if I can do it, Twilight. I don't know if I can sit here and big you up. Alright, okay, I will. I'll do it. You deserve it. It's only fair. Right, let's have a look, shall we? What a move of the decade. Okay, so start of the last lap. Twilight is in 8th place, with not a hope in hell of doing well. And then Rich goes wide and Jimmy goes wide, so now he's up to 6th place, but surely there's still too much to do. Gary getting sideways and a little laggy behind him. Now on to the Mulsanne Straight, where anything can happen, and usually high speeds or high crashes. But Twilight's got no slipstream, so even if he's getting boost, he's not going to be getting much more speed. However, Bob might be getting a little bit of slips. Bob is definitely getting a little bit of slipstream. So is he going to be friendly to Twilight, or is Twilight going to be ending up side by side? Let's have a look. Bob's going for the bump draft. So that'll put Twilight up to about 180 something mile an hour. If he changed gear, go up a gear, Twilight, you'll go faster. Oh, he has gone to 6th now. Okay, I saw another bump. I wonder what speed he's up to now. Tell you what, he's closing that gap in a little bit. I mean, Bob's doing 178, Twilight doing 180. Okay, now he's going to be in the slipstream of the cars ahead. Where's he going to go though? What's he going to do? Slipstream off SRI, goes round the outside. Now he's in 4th, nearly goes wide. Here's noise in the background. It's Bob. Bob takes out Jason. Slipstream off Conrad. He's now in 3rd place and 2nd place and braking alongside SGP. Surely he's not going to. Yes, he is. He's going to stay on the road and take 1st. Shocking scenes. It probably is. What a move of the decade, to be fair. Now, a massive thank you from Twilight to Bob, I'm sure. 1 for the bump draft and 2 for taking out Jason. Championship leader got stuffed on the last lap. Obviously purely accidental by Bob. I mean, when you're bump drafting someone into the kink, it is so easy to miss, to basically not get round the corner. It happens so often, it is so easy to do. For Twilight though, from 8th to 1st on one straight, okay, the straight's like 15 miles long, but can't fault what he's done there. And for anyone that says, well, the boost has helped him there, he would not have been getting boost once he was in about 5th place. So the boost did nothing for him once he got to 5th. It was all his talent. At least that's what we'll tell him. But no, to be fair, well done, Twilight. Great move. How you got it slowed down, I don't know. But yeah, well done. Brilliant to see. And a great way to end this G-Spot on a happy, exciting note. So, tickle the Twilight. Have a good one, everybody. Thanks for watching. You know what to do. Like, subscribe, and check out DGT's races for the next footage, where hopefully Ray will be joining us on commentary, and maybe even getting back for the next G-Spot. Depends on whether he has any crashes this week. Right. Have a good one, everyone. See you all again soon.